Sayyid Qutb.
Yeah, okay. Now we can start by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa man tabi'ahu bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Yeah, today we are going to discuss a new topic that is about another modern Muslim scholars in tafsir, and that is Sayyid Qutb. And we are going to look at briefly at his life and his early education. Then we focus on the methodology related to tafsir. So we are going to look at it as we have looked at the other Muslim scholars. So that is at the beginning brief. If you have anything, Brother Sanjad, you can ask. So let me just proceed with this. Like as I mentioned here, when you look at his, this is the complete name, that is Sayyid Qutb Ibrahim Hussain Shadili. That is based on his 101 book that is written by Muslim scholars about the life of Sayyid Qutb. So then when you look at the date that he was born, according to the literature that I refer to, he was born in 1906 in Egypt, and he died in 1966. And of course, perhaps I don't know whether you are aware or not. So he died because of, they found him guilty, according to them. After he was in prison, he wrote a book that was very, attracted the many people, especially the Muslims, when he talk about the concept of Jahiliyyah. The title of the book is The Milestone. Then that created a problem for the personality of Sayyid Qutb. And according to one of the writings that is written later on, one of the features that was present in the execution of Sayyid Qutb, he said that all the facts related to him and others that were executed were fabricated. So that is how they executed Sayyid Qutb, because of his influence and impact that he had on the Muslim community, as well as his ideas and the thoughts that were very, if I said that, constructive in nature, that he was calling for making Muslims to revive the understanding about Islam, as well as to cope up with the reality that they lived during that particular time. So when you look at the place of birth, so it is mentioned that he was born, of course, coming from a very simple family. And there is a book that is written by Sayyid Qutb about the boy from the kampung, from the village, the boy from the village. So he talks about, al-walad min al-qarya. So that book is written by him, where he mentioned how he came and how he became a greater personality later on. So it does mean that from where do you come from, but the most important thing is your ambition for knowledge. So when you look at Sayyid Qutb, that he is coming from that rural area, and later on that you see is very, very far from Cairo, the city itself. And let us go through his early education. So as I mentioned, that coming from this rural Muslim family or area, that according to what he has mentioned, that the village that he was living, it was a mixture between the Muslims and Christians, and of course that paved the way for Sayyid Qutb to look at it from a different point of view. And at the same time, that is another thing that made Sayyid Qutb to look at it according to the developments that were taking place during that particular time. So from it is mentioned in his writings as well, that he's coming from that good Muslim family, that they were very, practitioners of Islam. And his father, according to him, he was a leader of the National Party in the province or in the that he was living. So that is what is mentioned by Sayyid Qutb himself, and that is the reason why even later on Sayyid Qutb was very much attached to the National Party, and he was even to the highest level that he was very close to the political figures of that time. So that is we can say that. Let us go through in. I mean, at the early age, in 1912, Sayyid Qutb, he was sent to the school in the village, and from that early age, he was very, I mean, active, very energetic, and he himself has mentioned that when he looked at the school that he was attending, he was not happy with the curriculum of that school, even though the environment that he lived, it was a mixture between Muslims and Christians, and even though somehow in the school it was like not, if we say traditionally in that way, but still Sayyid Qutb was not happy with that, so he wanted to have, especially when he looks at the languages that he wanted to learn that were not present in the school. But what has been mentioned that you see, even though there were these kind of developments, so Sayyid Qutb was not a person that he inclined himself completely to modernization. Even though he appreciated the scientific developments of that time, but we can see that at the age of 10, he memorized the Quran. So it shows that he did not, disconnect the heritage, the past of the Islamic heritage from the developments of that time. So what his concern was like Muslims are not coping up with the development. And you can see later on in 1919, at the age of 13, so he was very, he has that skill or that if we said that passion and ambition for poetry, that is how later on in 1922, that made him to publish the first poem, that is The New Life, the title of that poem, And you can see from the early age, we can see that Sayyid Qutb was very eager to run after knowledge. And as it is mentioned here, so he was going after this person who used to sell, books at the village. So Sayyid Qutb was, very much passionate to read. So that made him to, if we said that he was very, if we said, attracted by the knowledge itself. And in 1920, if you say, and that is, you see at the early age, if we say that from the early age, they said that he was very talented, very active. And you can see here that at the age of 14, when he joined, if we said that when he came to Cairo, and that is how he stood there for 11 years, the place where he, and that is Darul Ulum, that the government school that he was attached to. And you can see that from 1920 up to 1925, and later on have from 1925 up to 1929 that he became a member of that school. A teacher in that school. After even graduation, he became a teacher. And we know that in that school, there was a mixture between traditional way of teaching and the modern way of teaching. And that is how, he was enrolled later on at the faculty of Darul Ulum. That is even the faculty itself bears the name that is reflecting the modernity itself. If we said that the knowledge that was presented by modernity during that time. And later on, he graduated when he went, if we see that in 1933, at the age of 27, he graduated in Arabic language and literature. So that is why he was very much, if we say that when you look at the way he studied and the passion that he had for knowledge, and we can see that his focus was on language. And that is the reason why he mentioned that why in the school in Darul Ulum that made him not happy, why they do not teach foreign languages, Even though in Darul Ulum, as it is mentioned here, the curriculum that the Darul Uloom was having was very rich. Then you can see the focus was on logic, philosophy, political history, economics, Arabic language, Islamic studies, theology, language, and even other language like the ancient Hebrew language was there. But of course, that was not the language that Qutb was talking about. So we look at the language of the West and the language of the science of that time. So that is very important here. And I can see later on, in 1932, a year before he was graduated, he gave a lecture. You see at that particular age, when he gave that lecture and a talk about, that he was very much, influential to the students. Even his own teacher, he was very proud of that, because he found that Sayyid Qutb was, showed his personality from that particular age. And you can see here what has been mentioned in one of the writings. After Sayyid Qutb, he finished his lecture, and his teacher, Mehdi Alam, he commented saying that Sayyid Qutb made him feel proud that he was his student. And after he had his lecture, so he said that I have to say that if Qutb were only my student, it would be enough for me to feel proud. So it means that that was the if we say the personality of Sayyid Qutb at that particular moment. When you go at 1932 at the early age, and later on you can see after he was graduated, he started working with the Ministry of Education because he became very a person that was very particular when it comes to the methodology in teaching in the schools, So that's why and of course, knowing the fact that he was very close to some figures in the state of that time, and he became very a part of, of the system by working with the Ministry of Education. And of course, he was attached to the school that he was graduated from the early age, that is Darul Uloom. And later on, we can see in 1948, that is a change that did take place in the personality of Sayyid Qutb. But of course, that did not change his personality as a Muslim. Because even though he went to United States to pursue, his education, but still within a period of 2 years, we can say that still he was not very much, influenced. But the only thing that made him, after looking at the United States, he said that they have developed, but they are ignorant. Why? Because when you look at the culture that they had, what they used to follow, it is, completely different from Islamic way of life. So that made him, to respond the way he responded. And you can see that later on, even though he had that after he came from United States, but you can see that he stood there for only 2 years, working with the Ministry of Education. Then he resigned, on 18 October 1952, And when he resigned, there is a conversation during the time why Sayyid Qutb, he resigned. And he said that he did not find this kind of freedom that he was supposed to get, let's say. And that, of course, that created a problem later on. Why when Sayyid Qutb, he was a member of Ikhwan al-Muslimin. So he met even Hassan al-Banna. He was among if we said that he was very attached to the top leaders of Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and that created a problem for him, even though, as I mentioned, there were photographies that show him with Gamal Abdul Nasir, that was, the figure of that time when I look at the, Egypt during that time, and looking at other Muslim brothers that were members of the Brotherhood at the early stage, And you can see later on, when Sayyid Qutb was put in prison with certain, members of Muslim Brotherhood, and of course, he spent most of his life after that in prison until he was executed. But what is very important to mention here, even though he was in prison, you can see that 1954 up to if we say 60, he managed to complete the writing of, fi Zilal al-Quran, so the tafsir of Quran. So that is very important, what we can see that Sayyid Qutb was very, a prolific writer who produced a lot of writings. And the last work that created problems for his personality, it was Ma'alim fi at-Tariq, that is a milestone that was published in January 1964. And you can see that because that created many problems for him, because masses were very attracted by the content of the book. And he was put in prison, then he was executed after that in 29 August 1966, even though it is stated in one of the writings that they wanted, before execution, they wanted Sayyid Qutb to acknowledge that he was guilty about what he has written in this book. But Sayyid Qutb, he said that I will not accept, so how can I exchange, a better place that I'll get in the everlasting life with a place that you'll give me in this life that doesn't have any meaning for me, So, and of course, most of the people, if we say most of the Muslims, they consider him as a shaheed, and even some of, his own sister, according to what has been narrated, and some of the members, they show, they expressed feelings. Even his sister said that she was able to see him in her dreams, that he entered Jannah, that is paradise. That is what has been mentioned by her. Of course, Allah knows best, but when you look at his personality, his activities, we can see that we just pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put him at the highest place in Jannah, because he contributed his life to the Muslim community, and he did everything for the sake of Allah, regardless of how people look at the thought, of Sayyid Qutb. But we know that until today, he has been and he still is very influential Muslim scholar among other Muslim scholars of his time and up to our time. And we can see that many contemporary Muslim scholars were, affected by the thoughts of Sayyid Qutb. And it is mentioned there as well that he wrote his literature in Arabic language. Most of the works were written in Arabic language, and he was very influential even to other parts, outside Egypt, especially in India. You see, in India, many, even Nadawi has mentioned in his writings that how influential, Sayyid Qutb was, towards the building of the ideas and the personalities of the Muslims in India and other parts of the world. So that is very important. Now, when you look at briefly what I've identified here, his intellectual approach. So when I look at how Sayyid Qutb look at, especially what is related to tafsir. I just managed to identify these points here. When you look at the conception of Islam as a divine system, even when he has written a book about Mustaqbal Hada Din. So that is, the future of this religion. So he's talking about Islam, the future of Islam. So he was very fond, if we say, very attracted, very attached to Islam as a way of life. And he looked at the Muslims and others that why he wrote another book that is about when he expressed his, thoughts and ideas about the ignorance that people were going through during that particular time, That's why when you look at, the Islam as a divine system, of course, a way of life that is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by which all Quranic principles and legislation outline the constitution of this system. So it means that according to what he has mentioned in his writings, when we refer even to his book, so Islam is not a religion that is created by people, by the Arabs. So no one can play with the teachings of Islam. Why? Because Islam is a way of life that is, constituted by the Quran itself. So all the teachings are, addressed in the Quran. So that is And even the name of Islam, it is addressed and mentioned in the Quran. So that will make Islam different from other religions that are claimed by people, whereas Islam is not a religion that is claimed by Muslims, but the Quran itself speaks about Islam. So that is very strong argument here that is put forward by, Sayyid Qutb, when you look at his personality. And when you look at the reification of Islam as an entity, what he was trying to do during that particular time, that people should understand Islam. Even when you look at his own village, the way people were very much attached to the culture and the tradition. So they were, especially when you look at the Sufi orders that they had during the time. So they were very much attracted by the Darawish, even in this village, what he has mentioned in his book, when he wrote about Al-Walad min al-Qarya, the boy from the village. So he mentioned that his life in the village, and when he said that, how come, the people, he was against the idea that how come the people, name the village according to this holy man that they called him the dervish, He said that there is no such thing in Islam, that you can do that. So, and another important thing, when we know that he was a person that he was very much attached to the developments that were taking place during the time, and being attached to certain personalities in the government. So we can say that he was very much influential personality when it comes to the political aspect of life that is promoted by Islam, how when we talk about the rules, and that is why he wrote a book even related to the governance, where he employed the term hakimiyya, when you look at how the governance should rule according to the divine commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he said the rulers, it rules by God's hakimiyya, Allah's hakimiyya, that is the governance that is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another important thing here, that when, as I mentioned previously, that is related to all societies, that the way he looked at it, even when he went to United States, so even though there was development according to him, but he saw that, yes, there was a kind of jahiliyyah, why? Because most of the societies were not preparing the way for the practice and implementation of this, the teachings of Islam. Why? Because they were ignorant about the teachings of Islam. And even he said that, like any other Muslim scholar that we mentioned previously, even Muslims misunderstood Islam. So it is like a revival that Sayyid Qutb wanted to present to the Muslims about the teachings or their understanding about Islam. Their understanding about Islam and the teachings of Islam. So that is very important here. And when you look at it related to what we are going to focus here about the tafsir of Quran, so here it is very important to mention that he has made it very clear, the way he understood the Quranic text and how he interpreted that. So that is related to the problems and the developments that were taking place during his time, And the second one, when you look at the first thing that the way he presents tafsir is how he understands, let's say, the environment and the Quranic text, and the second one, the ways that for during that particular time, how he as a Muslim thinker, let's say, how he was going to employ this kind of understanding and interpretation of the text in line with the terminologies that were there, in the text itself, that were in the Quranic text itself. That's why when you look at, his works that are very particular, even he has different works that are dealing on the tafsir of a particular surah, beside fi Dilal al-Quran, that is a complete tafsir. So he had done this kind of work previously. Now, when you look at the way how, some of the, if we said that one of the scholars, how he classified the works of Qutb, he said that Ibrahim Abu Rabi, he classified into 6 categories. As we mentioned previously, from the early age, Sayyid Qutb was very passionate, for poetry and literature. That's why we can see that he was, focusing on Arabic language. And later on, you can see the Quranic aesthetics that is related to the science dealing with the interpretation of the Quran. Then philosophy of social justice, because he wrote books about society, and sociology of religion, Quranic interpretation, and Islam and the West. There is a book where he wrote about Islam and the West, So that is very important. So if you have anything to say about what we have mentioned about his background, education background, his personality, his thoughts, and how he became influential personality during that particular time. You can comment, you can ask any question. Yeah, would you like to say anything, or we just proceed?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with the ideas of the Sayyid Qutb much, but we are taught that his ideas were based on the, if I am not confused, the Hizb ut-Tahrir, this. Is there any relationship with his ideas and the Hizb ut-Tahrir? This one question, and second one is that he was an Islamic reformist or not?
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, brother Sanjar. When I look at, of course, I don't know how, because people they say Islamic reformist, maybe we can say Muslim reformist, because he was not reforming Islam, because he was reforming the Muslim society according to the teachings of Islam. So that we have to differentiate between, the contribution that he and other scholars did, and Sayyid Qutb was very influential, because that during that particular time, as we have mentioned about Tantawi, let's say previously, that was the time that Muslim societies were going through many changes. You see the colonization, and in Egypt, we see that the influence of secularism, capitalism, and that is why even Sayyid Qutb mentioned that there is a difference when we talk about these ideologies that were presented by the West, by sign like capitalism, socialism, communism, all this ism, But he said that nothing is like Islam, That's why he used the term, Jahiliyyah, ignorance, because he did not see the reality, He did not see the reality how people should act and should live according to what Allah wants them to do, And of course, he is considered one of the personalities that he was, to liberate, if we say that, to liberate people from this ignorance that captured them. They were, especially the Muslim societies, they were captured like today, they became slaves of their own traditions and cultures and customs. So they are not, they did not understand Islam as a way of life. As I mentioned previously, that why he said, immediately said that there is no such thing in Islam that you can name the village according to the name of this holy man. You consider him as a dervish. So he was against this kind of things that were introduced by Muslims. There is no such thing in Islam, So they are related to the customs and traditions of the Muslims. So, and of course, he was a very influential personality, as I mentioned. Then it is stated there that he met Hassan al-Banna, and Hassan al-Banna introduced to him, what he had, the ideas that he had to contribute to the reform of the ideas, and looking at it from Islamic point of view during that particular time. When you look at the one he developed the organization, it was our society about the Muslim Brotherhood. So Sayyid Qutb said that even though he said that you can lead, he said, no, I'm not going to lead, you lead. He said to Hassan I mean, Bana one, he said, you lead, but I'll become just a member. So that's why when there were attempts to, I mean, to assassinate during the time the president of Egypt, you see, Nasser, during the time, so they caught the Muslim, I mean, this some members of the Muslim Brotherhood, and among them was Sayyid Qutb, you know, that as I mentioned previously, that whatever they said, so they fabricated this, you know. So there was no such thing that Sayyid Qutb was behind this, you know, even though he was very close to the governments, you know. You see, he was very close during, I mean, to the government during that particular time. But why he became a stranger to the government? Because of his ideas, and his ideas were very, if we said that he is considered like a mujaddid, you know, a reformist, you see, a reformist, reforming the society, something that was not liked even by the leaders of that time. You know? And you can see that why he mentioned like capitalism, socialism, communism were very much influential during that time, and the West. So he wanted to get rid of all these, I mean, ideas that were keeping the Muslim society, I mean, attached, if we can say, to what the colonizers presented to them, and he wanted to clean that by introducing the right understanding about Islam. And he, of course, he did not want to, because he was not of that opinion that Islam is contradictory to the scientific development, you know. That's why he said that modernism, there is no problem with the modern developments. So there should be a balance. He looked at it, there is a balance between the, if we say that the traditional way of teaching and the modern way of teaching. You see that is what he, I mean, he has mentioned in his books. So I hope this is clear, Brother Sanjar. So Sayyid Qutb, I mean, was and still is, you know. If you read his works, you become, I mean, very attracted by his ideas. He has influenced many great scholars of his time, you know, even contemporary time. If you see many Muslim scholars who, I mean, they have read they works, perhaps you do not know. If you read his works, then you can see later on many scholars, they have been influenced because the way they interpret, they have used the same methodology used by Sayyid Qutb, you know, even some of the ideas have taken from Sayyid Qutb. That is very important that we have to understand, you know, even though, I mean, the Westerners made him the enemy of the Muslims, and those who followed the Western ideas, you know, not the Muslims, you know. If you read his works, and I can mention here that if you, I don't know whether it is translated in English, he wrote a work about Tasawwur al-Islam, you know, the worldview, Islamic worldview. That is a great work that is written by Sayyid Qutb, you know, during the time, and it is very influential even during our time. I haven't seen any other work that is written at that level that he wrote about, I mean, the characteristics of Islamic worldview. Very unique, very unique. He mentioned all the characteristics. That's why I mean, all the books that he, I mean, wrote, and even some Western scholars, when they wrote about him, they found that he was very active scholar, I mean, social activist in all aspects. And he produced a lot of work, you know, many writings, you know. If you Google, you see that a lot of writings that were written, maybe 100 works, you know. If we say that books that he wrote. So that shows that he was, I mean, of course, that is what Allah gives. We believe that Allah gives to whom he wishes, you know. So that is very important, something that we have to acknowledge here. Yes, Brother Sam.
Thank you for your recommendation. I will try to find this book you mentioned. Thank
I'll
you,
share with
Professor.
you, Brother Sandra. I'll share you this. It is, I mean, of course, the level of language that he wrote is very high. You know? But of course, when you read it the first time, you read it many times, you'll understand. You know? You'll understand. So
Okay.
As I mentioned, if you look at, let's say, later on, we can see that even Qardawi has written about the characteristics of Islamic worldview, but not like Sayyid Qutb, you know? Not like Sayyid Qutb. So I mean, I have collected these books, but they are in Arabic, you know. As I mentioned, most of the works that are written, of course, he wrote all the works in Arabic language. Even though he went to United States, he knew English language, and he was of that opinion to study other languages, you know. So that is very important. So now let us look at the work here about his tafsir, that is fi Dhilal al-Quran. So just briefly, I mentioned here, you see there is not much said, but I mean that I just managed to write only this particular information about the tafsir, because later on you look at the methodology. So as I mentioned previously, this work was written within a period of 15 years, you know. So even they said that even when he came out from prison, you see that still he was, even when he was in prison, still he wanted to make it better, you know, to reading it again and again and again and again until he produced the last, copy of the tafsir that we have today. So as I mentioned here, it is very important when we read his tafsir, fi Dhilal al-Quran, that reflects his time, you know, and the problems that were faced by the Muslims and how he addressed with that tone. So when you're going to look at the examples, you'll understand the tone that is used by Sayyid Qutb, you know, through his tafsir to remind the Muslims, you know, how to behave, how to do things, how to live, how to respond, you know. That's why I said that this is, very rich, very, very wealthy, if I said that, of knowledge. And of course, his tafsir covers the whole, text of the Quran from A to Z. And it, as I mentioned, it was written, and he himself was rereading it again and again and again. You know? So that shows the highest level of his, personality and contribution to the knowledge that is related to tafsir of Quran. Even I know recently that in many educational, institutions, they do read again and again tafsir of Sayyid Qutb, that is fi Dhilal al-Quran. So that is very, very important, you know. So let us look at his methodology, as I mentioned here. So you see what he has mentioned. So why I put this, you see in prison, even though he was in prison, he was not afraid of that, you know. So that was an example, that he put forward as a personality. What he said, all people go to Allah after they death, but the happy person is the one who goes to Allah while still alive. So that means that he was active here, you know. He was very much, still alive. It means that what he left behind made him a living personality. So we have to understand this reality, you know. He was very attractive during his, through his writings. So that is why he came out with this kind of expression. And now when I look at his methodology, so when you read that he has mixed between both, if we said that, tafsir bil mathur and tafsir birai, and I just identified this, this methodology that were used by him, and we are going to look at the examples here. So his method is very unique. Why I mentioned this very unique, because at the beginning of, he will give us an overview about the tafsir of that particular verse. You know, when he starts to interpret, he will give us an overview about that verse. That's why and of course, other than that, he refers to other verses from the Quran to interpret that particular verse, and he refers to the sayings of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as to the companions and they life per se, you know. Now let us see the methods. The first one that I mentioned, tafsir al-Quran bil Quran, tafsir al-Quran by Sunnah or Hadith, tafsir al-Quran by the sayings of Sahaba, and tafsir birai, that is the reason-based, exegesis, that is a tafsir according to his own opinion. According to him, when he mentioned the last part, that the door of ijtihad is open in order to respond to the problems faced by the Muslim Ummah during that particular time, you know. So he said that, he was against those who closed the door of ijtihad. like some people said that now we don't need ijtihad, you know. So we need, during the time they needed ijtihad more than as we need it today, you know. And of course, you know this, how the tafsir of Quran bil Quran it is done. When you refer to other verses, and by sunnah when you, support your arguments and the interpretation of the Quran related to that verse by bringing in sayings of Prophet ﷺ related to the content of your, analysis or interpretation. The same thing goes to tafsir al-Quran by the sayings of Sahaba. So that is, he brought in to support his arguments, you know. So that is very important that we have to understand his methodology, even when we go through or read his tafsir fi dalal al-Quran. So I just brought here, very simple. I have, as we have mentioned, when you look at the Surah al-Fatiha, so if any one of you would like to read, then let us see how we are going to comment on the way he interpreted that, you know. So any one of you would like to read the Arabic version? And one of you would like to read?
Okay,
yes,
bro.
Aziz,
Let me read, bro.
Yeah, please, brother.
Yeah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Al-qawl fi ta'wili qawlihi ta'ala iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You alone do we worship and you alone aid we seek. Yaqulu Sayyid Qutb wa hadhihi hiya al-kulliyah al-i'tiqadiyah allati tansha'u 'anil kulliyat as-sabiqa fi surah. Fala ibadata illa lillah wa la isti'anata illa billah. Wa idza kana Allahu wahdahu huwa alladhi yu'badu, Prof.
Yeah, yu'bad. Huwa alladhi yu'bad.
Yes. Wallahu wahdahu huwa alladhi yusta'an. Faqad takhallasa ad-damir al-bashari min istidlali an-nuzum wal awda' wal ashkhas kama takhallasa min istidlali al-asatir wal awham wal khurafat fi dhilal al-Quran.
Okay, as it is mentioned here, maybe anyone, Brother Sanjar or the brother Putra, would you like to read the English version, please?
May I try?
Okay, brother.
Sayyid Qutb says this is the fundamental principle that arises from the preceding principles mentioned in this surah. There is no worship except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there is no help except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is the one who is worshipped, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone is the one who grants help, then the human conscience has been released from the humiliation of systems, conditions, and people, just as it was released from the humiliation of myths, illusions, and superstitions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, brother Sanjay. Okay, that is good. So how do you look at this, the way he interpreted this al-ibadah, let's say, and isti'ana? So what kind of approach or methodology he used here? And what does it reflect? You know, when you look at this small paragraph that we have taken from his tafsir, so how do you look at it?
I think Quran bil tafsir bil Quran, because I think he uses making tafsir using previous ayah.
But did he use here any verse here? I mean, is there any verse from the Quran here, Brother Sanjay?
No, not there is no other verse, but he using the same verses to explain the following verse, I think.
No, now we are looking at this. Is there any other verse that he mentioned in this?
No, but I don't know. Tashir Bilrai, maybe.
Okay, please, others. I mean, my brother Saput would like to say anything.
Okay, thank you, Prof. As he using his opinion, I think, to explain the ayah iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, deal with the particular issues and phenomena. There is the words as
Like, I mean,
like
I mean, what? I mean, what? Of course, as you mentioned here,
النظم
yes, this
والأوضاع الخرافات. That's the isyarat. The isyarat. How we explain the reflection. What she thinks in that particular issues and phenomena.
and shows the situation of the society during that time, you know.
Yes, society, nizam hukum system.
Yes, that people, I mean, if they, that is why he said that. I mean, this is his own, I mean, interpretation that reflects the situation that Muslims and others used to live during that particular time. Even as I mentioned, based on what he has written previously, that even in his own village, you know, they use these superstitious things, you know, and myths. So that is why and we know even today, I mean, Muslims are affected by this myths and illusions, you know, superstitions. But not only that, that reflects even the situation of the non-Muslims, you know. He lived in the United States for a short period of time, but that is what is so even in the Egyptian society that was calling for, I mean, for liberation, you see, from what they consider that they used to be in line with the developments of that time, you know, because they wanted to follow modernity. So that is how he said that when people worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask help from him, then they are going to feel free, you know, they will release themselves from all these problems, you know. They will not humiliate themselves to the system, but they have to humiliate themselves from, I mean, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he said that, that showed that how people, they forgot, I mean, Islam, and they forgot their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even Muslims, but they were humiliating, they were afraid of the systems that were created by them. That is what, I mean, how we understand here. So that is how, and this is very powerful, that the focus here, it is calling people to come back to understand Islam. You know? Of course, this is directed to the Muslims, even those who would like to read non-Muslims, that is meant for even for them. But this is, since it is written in Arabic, that he has targeted this to the Muslim community of that time. Because he saw that people, they were not sincere in their worship, you know, then how can you ask Allah for help? It is very, yes, Brother Sandra.
Thank you. I think here I understand. It's not. I know it before, but again, I think he is calling for people, Muslims, for the Tawhid, the true Tawhid, because
exactly,
we worship alone Allah, and we should seek help only from Him, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a sense of Tawhid. That's why he read such things has been released from the humiliation of systems, conditions, and people. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, exactly. That is, Brother Sandra. Of course, that is I mean, if you said the uniqueness or the unity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, unity when you look at in the whole creation, So unity in the Creator, then unity in what Allah has created. That is how we understand the concept of Tawhid. So he is calling people to come back to the reality. Of course, the Muslims, they have to understand Islam, and how they understand Islam by understanding the Quran, you know. So when you read the introduction that he has written in the tafsir, you know, that is very powerful, because he has mentioned here the ways that made him and what he feels while reading the Quran, you know. So that is very important. Only those who live and read and understand the Quran, they are going to feel the real happiness, you know. So that is very important. So I'll share with you the translated version. I don't know whether that will be powerful like the Arabic version, but you can read the introduction. Is very important, you know. So in the Arabic version that I have written, he has mentioned this is very powerful, very lengthy and very powerful. Writing that the way he presented. So he shows, let's say, his position towards the problems that were created by people when they did not follow the teachings of Quran. And when we talk about the teachings of Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet, that is Islam all about, you know. So Islam is not coming from other sources. Islam is coming from Quran and Sunnah. Is it clear? So we have to make it very clear, you know. So we don't have an Islam contribution of people. So when you look at Islam as a way of life, it's coming from Allah. And the Quran is from Allah. And the Sunnah is everything that Allah commanded, Prophet Muhammad to do and to act and to say, you know. So everything that Prophet did is not against the commandments of Allah. So that's why we say that the Sunnah is a reflection of the Quran, you know. So we have to be very clear about that, because some people, they might think that, and in order to make, to maintain the beauty of Islam as a complete way of life, so he is reminding people about getting rid of all these things that were created by people. Why you have to humiliate yourself in front of the system that is created by you, or the ideas that are coming from you. And you see that the people, you see, even today, you see people worship people, you know, people worship position. So they humiliate themselves in front of those who have position, even Muslims, you know, or they have this kind of myths that doesn't make any sense, you know. So now they talk about this, things that people are going to be, they have created a system, scientific system that people can be resurrected, you know. This is nonsense. This is something that Muslims should not, be taken away, because we know what is, who has the authority to resurrect people. So people cannot do that, you know. Anyone that is created by Allah doesn't have the characteristic of the Creator to do such thing. Like nobody can create except the Creator. So that is how we have to look at it. But this is the reality, you know. Like when you can see that all these myths and people believe, and illusions, like dreaming, you know. So you can dream to achieve your aims and goals, but you have to work. You see, dreams cannot become reality because, unless you work. And I can mention here, like, even, of course, we know very well that risk is provided by Allah, but we have to run after the risk, after the provision. So even Umar al-Khattab has mentioned that, yes, the risk is written by Allah, but you have to run after the risk. You have to go and work for the risk, you know. Nothing can come to you just like that. So I believe that this is very clear, you know. So that shows, as we mentioned, both the situation, how the Muslims were during that particular time, and it showed that they misunderstood Islam, you know. That's why he's calling the Muslims to come back to and to understand Islam as it is. Now let us look at how he continues. You see, this is.
May I have a question, Prof?
Yes,
right?
yes, please.
There, I seem founding two principles: the present principles and the preceding principles. So, what are both principles?
What do you mean, the principles?
In the previous slide, Prof. In the previous slide, ya kan Abu just now. So this is the fundamental principle that arises from the preceding
principles mentioned in this surah. Now, what he mentioned, when you look at the terms like related to Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, you see these are the what he has mentioned previously. Like when he talk about Maliki Yawmiddin, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Maliki Yawmiddin, even that he said that these are, if we said that the principles here that are related in this surah, that are related to al-ibadah and isti'ana. Is it clear, brother?
Does it mean verse, bro? Does it mean verse?
In this surah, he said in this surah, what he discussed in the same surah.
Yeah. Before iyaka
you see, before, because when you look at the what he said, وَهَذِهِ هِيَ الْكُلِّيَّةِ الْإِعْتِقَادِيَّة, that is the fundamental principle, التي تنشأ عن كليات السابقة في سورة, because he has mentioned the preceding principles that he mentioned in this. So when you look at from the beginning, there are other terms that are denoting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as this, as the center of everything, So these are the principles.
Yeah, because I found there the term al-kulliyat, and because I'm focused on maqasid syariah, kulliyat khamsa, I just have a question. Is there any relation with al-kulliyat al-khamsa or something else?
Now, kulliyat, he said that kulliyat al-i'tiqadiyya, So this is related to the fundamental principles that are related to the system of belief itself, if I said that, Is it clear?
Okay, bro.
This is how we look at it. Of course, this is related to the first, if we said the principle, or if we said that the first rukun of Iman, that is Iman Billah. So everything is related to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is how I understand this. So when I said that Kuliyat al-I'tiqadiyya, so this is related to the Iman itself, the creed itself. So I said the creed, how we believe, among the fundamental principles. When you look at the principles, that are the Rukn al-Iman, and we look at the Rukn al-Islam. This is the application, But Kuliyat al-Maqasid, the Sharia, that are related to, like, maybe when it maybe can be related to Himayatud Din, for example. Because if Muslims do not practice Islam, then you don't see Islam in them, Of course, we believe that Islam stands by itself, but Muslims, they cannot stand as a community if they don't follow Islam, So that is another thing that we can relate most probably. I said that if you relate to the first, principle of Maqasid Sharia, that is how we protect, if we said how the system that is created by Islam to protect the dini identity, the deen itself, through application, through laws, restrictions, So we restrict people, especially Muslim, they have to offer praise regularly. They have to show the Islamic identity wherever they go, So that is how we said that we identify and maintain our identity as Muslims by following the teachings of Islam. So that here it is the way of life that we have to live as such. So I hope that is good that you raised that question, Brother Aziz, because that will make us, look at it from a different point of view. And
yes,
welcome. It is in line with that because, as he has mentioned, that even Muslims were jahil, ignorant, ignorant about Islam itself, because they mixed with the myths and superstitions as well. Even as I mentioned, his own community that he was living and grown up, he saw these realities, That's why he was not happy. So let us further continue look at. any one of you would like to read the Arabic? That is a continuity of what we have mentioned about the same surah.
Yeah, let me read, Prof.
Okay, brothers.
Okay, yaqulu Sayyid Qutb wa huna yu'radu mawqiful muslim minal quwa al-insaniyah wa minal quwa at-tabi'iyah. Fa ammal quwa al-insaniyah fil qiyas ila al-muslim fa hiya naw'ani. Quwa muhtadiyah tu'minu billahi wa tadba'u manhajallahi wa hadhihi yajibu ayyu aziraha wa yata'awanu ma'aha 'alal khair wal haqq was salah wa quwa dhalah la tattasilu billahi wa la tadba'u manhajahu wa hadhihi yajibu ayyu haribaha. Yes, bro.
ولا تتبعوا منهجه.
Thank you, bro. wa la tattabi'u manhajahu wa hadhihi yajibu ayyu haribaha wa yukafihaha wa yughayyiru 'alaiha. Kam min fi'atin qalilatin ghalabat fi'atan katsira bi idznillah ghalabatha bi ittisaliha bi masdaril quwwah al-awwal wa bi istimdadiha minan naba' al-wahid lil quwwah wa lil 'izzah jami'an fi dhilalil Qur'an. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, thank you, brother Aziz. Yeah, thank you very much. So anyone other would like to? So welcome, brother Nasir. We pray to Allah that everything will be all right with your daughter, inshallah. So maybe the line. So any one of you would like to read? Maybe brother Saputro, can you read this?
Okay, Prof. I'll try. Sayyid Qutb says, here the Muslim's position on human forces and natural force is presented. To the Muslim, the human power falls into two categories: a rightly guided power that recognizes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and abides by his direction. He is required to endorse and cooperate with it in goodness, truth, and righteousness. And a misguided force that doesn't relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and doesn't follow his way, and this must be fought, struggled, and changed. The Quran says, many a small band, by the grace of God, have vanquished a large one. Al-Baqarah 249. Such victory at apparently weaker house could only be achieved when it relies on God, the source of all power. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, brother Saputo. Thank you very much for reading. So I would like to say something about the methodology here.
Sayyid Qutb using the tafsir ayat bil ayat or tafsir biriwayah when he refers Surah Al-Baqarah second verse verse 249 Surah Al-Baqarah, such victory of the apparently a small hand by the grace of God has vanquished a large one.
Yeah, that is good. I mean, of course, he's used here other verses from the Quran in order to illustrate his argument here and to support his argument here that he's talking about. So that is a continuity of what he has mentioned previously about al-ibadah and isti'ana. Then he further elaborates it by looking at it from a different point of view. Now he represents how a Muslim should be, because he's looking at the Muslim, his position as such, by looking at him having of course, the way Allah created us, So we look at the fitra and what we get when it comes in this world. So the fitra that is coming with us, and that will link people with the Creator, and everything is provided in that, way, that how we look at the reality. Sorry. So I don't know how you look at, and of course he's reminding, the Muslim that you have to follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he provides here the differences between those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what they're going to get, and those who are, who are following let's say or they rebel, those who rebel, and the misguidance will follow them. It is because of their rebellion. So those who follow the right way, that is, here we said that Islam is a way of life, and they are going to be guided and they'll get what they deserve. And those who do not follow that, and of course to acknowledge that fact that those who are righteous people and rightly guided, they will get, even though they are small in number. That's why he brings in here the Quranic verse from Surah Al-Baqarah, saying that even though you are small, but of course, with the power that Allah grants to you, you can stand in front of a bigger, society or people who are against you. So that is how he, was able to stand up and to oppose all this, everything that was against Islam, against the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, what he said, that all that power you can get from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he is calling people to come back and to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it shows that Muslims were very weak in their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we look at our, contemporary time, if we look at even if we can say majority of Muslims, they don't have a good relationship with Allah, because how do you look at the good relationship with Allah? When you are obedient to Allah. Obedient, it means that in everything that you do. So you have to live as a Muslim according to the commandments of Allah. But are we, if we look at our community today, are the Muslims, representing themselves according to that? Do they present, do they walk, do they live, do they talk, do they do everything according to the commandments of Allah? So we don't look in one particular region, in one particular community, but when you look at, we have up to 2 billion Muslims, Of course, forget about non-Muslims. So that is what, this is a reminder if I said that. And at the end, he's showing that all that power that will lead you to righteousness is given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how to get that, if you don't, follow the way that Allah has provided for you. So that is very important, That's why he said that the victory, the success that you can get in this life and in the hereafter can be provided, or you can achieve that by relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what we can see it, a general observation. If you go further into deep understanding, then you can look at it, maybe the problems that Muslims were facing during the time, even the leadership, we can say that they were influenced by the Western ideologies, as he has mentioned, like socialism, communism, capitalism. And when he compared, when he went to United States, then he compared then what he saw, that even though, as I mentioned, you can see the material development, but people will not benefit from that material development that they have if they disconnect themselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, he targeted here humanity at large, but of course, very specific that is related to the Muslims per se, That's why he mentioned here the term Muslim, وَهُنَا يُعْرَضْ مَوْقِفْ al-Muslim. So he doesn't say that because even Muslims are not different from other human beings, but what will make them different from other human beings, you know? It is the strong relationship that they have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something that others, they do not have, they do not know. You know? So this is what I can say. If you have anything else to say, please do so.
Some comments.
Yes, yes.
I think why he was executed by the government is I think he was because of his thoughts about if the government not followed the right path, so it must be changed, altered, and back to the right path. That's why he was, I think, he was persecuted for such things, because you know, in our previous classes, the contemporary Muslims didn't mention or claim such statements or told such statements. So only he, Sayyid Qutb, said about the fought, struggled, and changed the corrupted Tawhid system, I think, political system. It's very interesting because
You can see that his, I mean, his connection with the those who are in the leadership, you know, the leaders.
yes,
Connect with the
yes,
leaders.
yes, yes.
That shows his, I mean, inclination, because he was struggling a lot to, I mean, to change the mindset of the leaders, you know, during the time.
Yeah, that's why he was executed by
Exactly. Yeah.
such a people.
Yeah.
And because of he was very brave, I think, to say such things.
Yeah. Exactly. You know.
Afraid of the government or being.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, and even here we can see that he is expressing his own, I mean, impression or his own feeling. Assuring that, saying that I mean,
that's why here the official ulama here in Uzbekistan prohibited to read his books here.
you see now.
Yeah, he's make his
Because that will
teachings.
shake the because he's, of course, he's not looking at it the way others look at it. You know, he does not separate but he was criticizing the leaders because he did not see Islam in them. You know, like today. I mean, we are talking about Muslim leaders. You know, we don't talk about
Yes.
non-Muslims. Non-Muslims, they have their own way of understanding and doing things. You know, but he is here targeting the Muslim leaders.
Yes.
And the Muslim leaders of that time, I mean, they were not different from our time if we look at the reality, you know. They were laborers of the West, you know. Those were because the colonizers were dominating the Muslim world. So those were leading the Muslims in Egypt during the time. So they were the laborers of the West. They had the same ideas. So that was a threat for them, you know, their position. So looking at this revolutionary, I mean, approach, and there is a book that is written by others that when they present the ideas of Sayyid Qutb as a revolution, you know, because his ideas will bring a revolution that this will change the personality, the mindset of the Muslim, as well as the system itself. And he was talking about the society, because if people change, then the leadership can change. But if people do not change, then the leadership will be the same, you know. So now, why he brought this verse here? I mean, you don't have to be afraid of these people, but you have to be afraid of what you are going to get tomorrow when you stand in front of Allah. I mean, that is very clear here. That is very clear. And you see here what he further elaborates when you look at this, the force that you get, the natural force, you know. So let me just read this. ويقول السيد قطب: وأما القوة الطبيعية فموقف المسلم منها هو موقف التعارف والصداقة لا موقف التخوف والعداء. You see that he is doing a comparison between these two sets. You know, when he talks about the first one that is related to his good characteristics as a Muslim, that is his friendliness and curiosity, you know, and the second aspect that is fear and hostility, you know. So why you should follow the second one? So you have to follow the first one that is presented by a Muslim. But maybe we can say, I mean, of course, you don't have to be hostile to people, on others. I mean, if a Muslim were hostile towards one another. And he said, ذلك أن قوة الإنسان وقوة الطبيعية صادرتان عن إرادة الله ومشيئته. So both these, I mean, powers that we get, or the Muslim gets, his human, if we say, power that is given, and the natural power, that these are coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everything is done with his will and permission. That's why he said that محكومتان بإرادة الله ومشيئته متناسقتان متوعينتان في الحركة والاتجاه. You see what he's saying, that all these are, coming and subjected to the will and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, if they are perfectly governed, these two aspects that we have, if they are perfect, it is like, maybe we can say the idea of a tawassul, said the tawazun, moderation. So moderation should be there. If we say between the quwa al-insaniya or quwa tabi'iyya, then the Muslim should use the moderation approach in order, al-wasatiyya, if we say, as a Muslim, you know, in order to put the balance. And he is saying that all this is coming from Allah. Then when a Muslim knows that all this is coming from Allah, then he should act righteously. He should act what is required for him to do, you know, or to act accordingly. And he said that is how you can easily coordinate if you have a balance. And when you know that this is all the power and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can coordinate everything that you want to do. Well, that's why he talks about it, fil haraka wal itija, the way you do things, the way you act, the direction that you have. So that, I mean, everything that you want to do, your views, your ideas, your application, how you're going to put this into action. So when you have this balance and you have a strong relationship with Allah, then you can coordinate everything and operate them easily, you know. And maybe here he is relating this even to the revolution itself. I mean, a revolution that is in the person himself, and revolution that can come out into the society, you know, that can bring change. So that is how, if you'd like to have anything to say, please do so, you know. Any one of you'd like to add anything? Maybe you can about this methodology.
I'm Prof.
Yes, please, brothers, support.
I hear from some source if Sayyid Qutb is a journalist, and this position give his thinking about Reformation spread around the world until Indonesia, and
Yes,
in
yes,
Indonesia,
exactly.
in Indonesia, you know, Hizb ut-Tahrir Indonesia.
Hizb ut-Tahrir, yeah.
Yeah, this is the precise example how the Reformation thinking.
The revolution, you said, the revolutionary
revolution thinking.
Yeah, thinking. Yeah, this is how.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to say that. Yeah, it is mentioned that it came up to this. You know, Indonesia was affected by his ideas during the time as well, and even until today. You know, even we can say lately in Malaysia they accepted his ideas, even though they're very particular. But I've seen that. Why I mentioned many of them they read now. I mean the Dilal al-Quran. So that is, if we read this to the masses, to the Muslim, then this, you see what kind of, I mean, expression that is used by Sayyid Qutb is very powerful, you know. This is a very powerful expression, the way he, and of course, as we mentioned previously, you see from the, at the age of 13, and how he was very particular, going to the booksellers, asking for books, and even he used to sell even magazines, everything that he used to read. He became very, very active, very active. Okay, that is good, Saputo. So still in Indonesia, they are very sympathetic about the ideas of Sayyid Qutb.
But the bad news, Tafsir Fidal Quran in Indonesia is banned.
Is banned.
Yes.
La ilaha illallah.
Bad news.
Here in Malaysia, I don't think so, because we read this in our university, Here they read Tafsir fi Dalal al-Quran. It is, weekly classes that are given by one of the scholars here. And this is online, this is, so, that is very, of course, they look at it the way the Egyptians or the Egyptian leaders look at that time, that is the reason why they executed Sayyid Qutb, why? Because of his approach, his influence on the masses, even other, you see, there are many great scholars from Egypt that they ended up like Sayyid Qutb, because of their influence, they approach that is very Islamic. We don't see anything here different from Islam. So if we allow Muslims to read the writings of Muslim scholars that are very Islamic in nature, then we don't have any problem, So Muslims do not create problems, but of course those, those who are leading, they are afraid of their position, because they will not be able to steal, they will not be able to cheat, they will not be able to corrupt, or to be corrupted as well. So that is the thing, It is like if you, if alcohol is going to be stopped, then the business of alcohol will not be there, If drugs are going to be stopped, then drugs will not be there, So there is a whole industry, behind it. Like, even though they say that smoking, it is forbidden, but you see, they sell smoking, They themselves contradict what they claim. So that is what, Sayyid Qutb said, that Muslims should not be like that. So whatever we say, and if you say that you are a Muslim, then you have to live, you have to think, you have to believe, you have to act, you have to do everything according to Islam. So that should be our concern. Is it clear? So this doesn't make us, to be hostile to others. That's why he said that you have to be neither you have to be naive, nor hostile. So that should be a balanced approach. And I have heard that in Indonesia, in many places, they use this moderation, moderate approach, Otherwise, it would be difficult, especially to survive in our contemporary time, when we are, the dominant culture and civilization that is, from the scientific or culture base, a civilization that is dominating the world. So, and that is very Islamic in nature. What the approach that we have to use. So that is, what we can say here. So let us look at, further. You see what he further said about what. Now he's coming to what? To the Aqidah of the Muslim. So after presenting how Muslim should be, the personality of the Muslim, now he's talking about the belief, the creed of the Muslim. So any one of you would like to read? Would like to read the Arabic version?
Yeah, yes, correct.
Okay, brother Aziz.
يقول سيد قطب إن عقيدة المسلم توحي إليه أن الله ربه قد خلق هذه القوى كلها لتكون له صديقا مساعدا متعاونا، وأن سبيله إلى كسب هذه الصداقة أن يتأمل فيها ويتعرف إليها ويتعاون وإياها ويتجه معها إلى الله ربه وربها وإذا كانت هذه القوة تؤذيه أحيانا فإنما تؤذيه لأنه لم يتدبرها ولم يتعرف إليها ولم يهتد إلى الناموس الذي يسيرها في بلاد القرآن.
Yeah, thank you very much, brother. Yeah, that is. You see how powerful is, how powerful it is. Okay, I mean, any brother Sanjar or Saputra would like to read the English version. Now, I mean, what we are trying to do here, beside identifying the method, we are even interpreting what he has interpreted, the way we look at it. And we have to make sure how to reflect and how to relate his interpretation to our time. Okay, brother Sandra, please.
Thank you. Sayyid Qutb says, the Muslims create Islam, teaches him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his Lord, has created all these powers to be for him a friend, a helper, and a cooperator, and that his way to gain this friendship is to reflect on it. He gets to know its powers, cooperates with it, and turns with it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his Lord and its Lord. And if these forces sometimes harm him, they only harm him because he didn't consider them and did not recognize them and did not find guidance in the law that runs them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Sanjay. So what we can see here, I mean, he is using his opinion in further interpreting. Now, if we can say that he is looking at the personality of Muslim, how a Muslim should be. And he said that a Muslim has these two powers, القوة الإنسانية والطبيعية. Then how to be moderate when he's acting, Then he said that this is the aqidah that will make him. And according to this aqidah the Muslim has, then the aqidah shows him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his Lord, his Rabb. And all this quwwah that is with him is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, Brother Sanjar, you wanted to say something?
No, thank you.
What you're trying to say here, I mean, what he's looking at, the problem is that why we end up by having conflicts, problems, is because the Muslim does not cope up with what Allah has given to him, knowing that everything is given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he does not cope up with them, does not look at the things as they are, so that is even he does not understand them properly, It is like when you do not understand Islam, then you misinterpret Islam. When you do not understand the Salah, then you will not be able to perform Salah properly, And if you are going to teach how to offer Salah to others, then you misinterpret and you mislead people. So that is what he's saying, that why this harm is coming, because of the misunderstanding, And people do not consider that. We have some even learned people, you can say that they have degrees, they have education degrees, but they still commit, conflicts or create conflicts, And when you remind them, they become arrogant, That shows ignorance that they have. So when you know that what you said is wrong, then you have to admit that, because this will create a problem. So this will create a problem for the whole system, This is how it is, like what Prophet ﷺ said, that is how the Ummah, we are, that we have to feel one another, because we are as one single body, So it is like if you cut the finger, the whole body will feel the pain. So the same thing, one member of the Ummah is harmed, then the whole Ummah is going to feel or to get the harm that is, that person or that member of the Ummah is getting. The same thing goes here, And another thing is because of mismanagement, what he mentioned here, then people do not monitor things properly, So first it is like maybe lack of knowledge, that this will cause harm to him because he does know things, and maybe he knows, but he does not monitor them properly. That is another thing, and that is he does know how to follow the proper way or system, And when people do not, if they're not serious, they are not sincere, then they will not get, they don't see the guidance of Allah. You know, it is like some people when they're not sincere, they want things to be given to them by Allah very fast. You know, so when they offer prayers regularly, I mean salah regularly, they try to become very sincere with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they don't get what they ask for, they say that I have worshipped Allah for many years, you know, but I don't get what I need. So that is how they think, you know. But they forgot that what they have, it is all from Allah. You see that is, if we say that, how they don't see the beauty and the blessings of Allah. You see, and really they don't see the guidance, you know, the real guidance that they have to follow. So that is how, when we know that that we are created by Allah and everything else is created by Allah, then this will make our life very easy, you know. That's why we seek help from Allah alone. So that reflects what he started from the beginning, then he's explaining that, you know. So he's emphasizing on the issue that all this ibadah and isti'ana, this is, all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is like the one who deserves to be worshipped is Allah, and from the one that you get help is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the center of everything that you are looking for is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not anyone else, you know. But when you go against that order, that law that Allah created, then you'll not see the beauty, if we say, of Islam. You don't see the beauty of, if we say, the Quran, you know, because if you read the Quran like mechanical, reading, then you don't see the beauty of Quran. That is the reality. And Quran doesn't mean that you have to keep in your pocket, you know. It doesn't mean that you just read because you want to read. It means that you read, understand, and live according to the Quran. So this is what is, what I have understood that what is saying here, you know. So they are related with one another. It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the center of ibadah and the center of isti'ana. That is what Islam is telling us, you know, what our iman, aqidah is telling us. So I hope that this is clear, you know. If you have anything else to add, to say, please do so, you know. So if you can Brother Aziz, would you like to read this?
Okay, bro. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yaqulu Sayyid Qutb annahu ya'taqidu anna Allah huwa mubdi'u hadhihi al-quwa jami'an wa anna 'ala al-insan an yashkura Allah kullama hayya'a lahu ayyadhfira bima'unatin min ihdaha. Allahu huwa alladhi yasfaruha lahu wa laysa huwa alladhi yaqharuha. Sakhara lakum wa yusakhiruha lahu wa laysa huwa alladhi yaqharuha. Sakhara lakum ma fis samawati ma wa ma fil ardi jami'an. Al-Jathiyah 13 fi Dilal al-Quran. Thank you, bro.
You're welcome. So maybe Saputra would like to read the English version.
Sayyid Qutb says the Muslims firmly believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of all these forces, and that man should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whenever he is prepared to obtain help from one of them, these forces. So it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who subjugate them to him, and he's not the one who conquers them. And he placed at your service whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on earth.
Al-Jathiyah 45.
Al-Jathiyah, verse 13. Okay,
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Saputra. Okay, Brother Sanjar, would you like to say anything about the method that is used?
He continues his own opinion and giving the verse from Quran. This mixed, I think, tafsir.
Tafsir Birayat
Yeah.
from the Quran. Okay, okay. Yeah, there is. So we have here. One is his own opinion, and the second one is tafsir bil Quran. Quran bil Quran. You know, because that is the tafsir of this. I mean, the verse Iyaka na'budu Iyaka nasta'in. Is it clear? So you have to, you see how it goes on, because we are following, I mean, how does he interpret that verse from Surah Al-Fatiha? Is it clear? Okay, okay, that is good. So, I mean, he is further, I mean, as you mentioned here, so emphasizing on what the Muslim believes and reminding the Muslim that what he should do, you know, and not only Muslim, but men as such. So he's beside looking at those who believe that are the Muslims, but at the same time that he is reminding others that everyone should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever he has, you know. Even when you talk about here, the means of getting your provision, is it clear? When you look at the means of getting what we have, so like any kind, you can use any kind of means, like the power you can have, the forces, whatever it is, you know, the community, the position that you have. So you have to believe that all this is given to you by Allah. That's why people should be very thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But of course, those who do not have that kind of knowledge, they will not, I mean, acknowledge that fact. But that's why I said that a Muslim, وَأَنَّهُ يَعْتَقِدُ, the Muslim, and Allah huwa mubdi', هذه القوة الجميع. So he is very specific about the Muslim. Then when it comes to appreciation, he is targeting humanity at large, you know. That's why I said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's the one who is behind all these things, you know. So he does, of course, Allah does not just, I mean, gives you, then he will not allow you to make use of that, you know. So that is how Allah knows everything that he has created is meant for you to make use of it in a proper way. That's why Allah says that he placed at your service whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on earth. So you don't think that Allah created you, then he, I mean, forbids you from what is good. So Allah forbids you from what is destructive in nature. And of course, Allah created that in order to test people, you know. That's why we have, I mean, why Allah allowed, I mean, Shaitan was not created as Shaitan, you know, as we mentioned previously. But because he's disobedient, when he disobeyed Allah, he became rebellious. So that made him a person that does not follow righteousness anymore, you know. So when he became rebel, he became like a criminal. Someone who disobey, I mean, the law, then he commits a crime, you know. Then the one who commits a crime, he is going to be put in prison. So that is exactly what, I mean, happened to Shaitan. He was not like that before. So nobody, because some people say that he was created like that. No, he's created from the same matter like jinn, from fire. But Allah mentioned that among the jinn, there are Muslims and non-Muslims, you know. Is it clear? So that is how we look at it, that everything is created pure Islam to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is applicable to both creatures, you know, and any other creature is created as such. But I mean, mostly, I mean, human beings and jinn, they have a responsibility, and they're free to choose when they come to this world. So now when they are born and they, I mean, follow Islam, then they will maintain that. Whereas others will be responsible if they do not follow Islam, you know. So if they heard, they don't follow, then they'll be in trouble. That's why everything, imagine why man should be, I mean, should not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing the fact that Allah created everything for him. I mean, this is very strange, you know. This is very strange. It is like you provide everything to your neighbor, for example. You help him, you do all this, you know. Then it would be strange that your neighbor hates you. He tries to create problems for you. I mean, he tries even to harm you. So that is strange, you know. So that shows that that person is arrogant, you know, does not appreciate The same thing goes here. So those who do, especially those who know who is Allah, then they do not respond to his commandments, so they are very arrogant, you know. Even other human beings, you know, they have become arrogant. So they give priority to what is created by Allah instead of the creator himself. So this is very important here that we have to understand beside the methodology, because you can further interpret that as I mentioned. And here we can see there is a comparison between that he targeted the Muslim, then man as such, you know. So every human being should be thankful to what Allah has given to them. Not just only, I mean, those who know, but others, they have to be thankful, you know. So do you have anything else to say? Yeah, please, can you write your names here before we forget? In the chat room, can you write your names? And we can proceed if you'd like to say anything about Sayyid Qutb and his approach. That is very brief, you know. So why we give examples in order to identify and to be familiar with his methodology as well as his work. That is about tafsir, you know. So you can read, even though let's say in some countries they have abandoned, I mean, but nobody will come to our home and tell us why you read tafsir. Maybe you don't, you can indirectly, you can make use of his ideas, you know, because I don't see that his ideas are against the teachings of Islam, you know. If you read all the works of Muslim scholars, that's why here we can easily identify those Muslim scholars that belong to modern times, up to our time. The way they interpreted Quran, they use different methods, you know. So those who used a balanced approach, like Sayyid Qutb, and we look at in the previous class, when I look at Sayyid Nursi, let's say, we can see that they use the balanced approach, you know. So they did not disconnect themselves from the past, from the Islamic heritage. And they were not saying that Islam is against the scientific development, you know, or against the developments. They did not say that Islam is against the industry, you know, against the car, or against the means of transportation that were further developed. And today, the means of communication that are developed, you know. Now the problem will be when we abuse this. So Islam is against the abuse of this, you know. But to have this is good. So Islam, teaches us to, us and shows us the way how to, to develop ourselves, how to progress. You know, Islam is pro-progress, you know, development, but not destructive progress and destructive development and destructive kind of knowledge that you have. You see, that is how we look at it, you know. And you can see that based on what very simple example that we use, that we shared here, and we look at it from his steps here, and we can see how powerful it is, you know. And it is reflecting the teachings of Islam. We don't see anything that is against the teachings of Islam, according to our knowledge, you know. I don't know how others look, but according to our humble knowledge at this level, what we have seen now, we don't see anything that he says is against the teachings of Islam. So that is how we evaluate, and how we make use of their ideas, their thoughts, their writings, in our time. So that will help us to respond to the problems that we have today, you know. So we don't see any difference between his time and our time, you know. And today we have more problems, you know. Maybe these, let's say, LGBTs were not openly during that time, or feminism was not openly during that time, you know. People were talking about that, and he was, when I was reading about him, he was very supportive to the idea to bring out, to allow the women to come out to the education, to be educated, you know. You see, he was, supportive to that. Of course, he was not supportive to all this liberation, like to go beyond the limits that are set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have to be very clear about that, you know. Because some people today, they talk about these issues, but they forget about the boundaries that, we should put for ourselves as Muslims, and that are put according to the teachings of Islam. So that is what we should know. So is anything that you'd like to say before we leave?
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, welcome, brother. Brother Sanjar, would you like to say anything? And brother
No, Jazakallah khairan. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Saputra, would you like to say anything?
Jazakallah khairan.
Okay, I believe that now you have the picture, how to cope up with the tafsir and the writings of Muslim scholars in tafsir. I believe until we finish all this, then we are going to look a bit at the contemporary situation. So I believe that you have gained some kind of knowledge that will help you to cope up with the Quranic text that is interpreted by different Muslim scholars of our time, and easily you can identify the wrong interpretation and the right interpretation. So that is very important, Okay, thank you very much. Barakallah fikum. So we start a bit late, and I apologize. Yeah, then next time we are going to start on time, inshallah. So let us close by, yes, brother Aziz, would like to say anything?
I just want to say, how many classes, bro? The overall classes.
So we have another, I think this is class number.
Oh, this is the last, bro.
No, not the last one. This is the last one. So this is number 9. We have another 3 classes.
Oh, 3 classes. Yeah. I just think the time to to do my project.
Yeah, I'll send to you the template, because we give you due date until 15th of January, inshallah.
Oh, in January. Oh, okay.
But I'll give you the template. I have almost prepared the template. Then I'll send to you. Then I'll show to you what you are supposed to do. Okay. Maybe I'll send to you the template through WhatsApp. Then next class we can discuss. We can look at it briefly, what you are supposed to do. Is okay? Okay, inshallah, let us...
Thank you, bro.
Okay, let us close here by reciting Surah Al-Asr and Tasbih Kafara. Okay, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Fi amanillah.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, welcome.